The number 40 has much resemblance in the Bible. The Israelites wander aimlessly in the desert for 40 years. Goliath challenges the Israelite camp every day for 40 days until David defeats him. The prophet Jonah prophesies to Nineveh 40 days till Nineveh will be destroyed. And here at the beginning of the Lenten season, we see the number 40 yet again. Jesus fasts and prays in the wilderness for 40 days. Just as the number 7 is the number of perfection, the number 40 is the number of completion. But there's much more to the season of Lent than just its number of days. The season of Lent is a season of preparation for the massive celebration of Easter. Of course, Easter to us Catholics is more than just holidays and egg hunts. For us, it's the celebration of the resurrection of Christ, the most pivotal moment in the story of our salvation. Lent is a penitential season in preparation for that great feast. But why is it necessary? Why can't we just celebrate Easter and avoid all this fasting and penance? Well, this season of Lent gives us an opportunity to practice suffering just as Jesus did. It's a time to deepen our relationship with God and improve on many aspects of our life. During the Lenten season, we focus on three main things: almsgiving, prayer, and fasting. Believe it or not, Jesus talks about all three of these in succession in Matthew chapter 6, and he also explains how we should approach each one. Let's start with almsgiving. So when you give to the needy, do not announce it with trumpets as the hypocrites do in the synagogues and on the streets, to be honored by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you give to the needy, do not let your left hand know what your right hand is doing, so that your giving may be in secret. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. In this passage, Jesus not only tells us how to give, but reminds us that the Father will reward those who give with the whole heart. Here it's important to remember what our intention should be while almsgiving. For example, we could give heaps of thanks to others, or donate tons of money to a charity. But if we're doing this just so we can brag about it, or show other people how good we are, then there's no point. If our intention is to gain publicity, then our generous actions have no value in God's eyes. Therefore, you must give in secret and with great love, as Jesus says, wholeheartedly for the people you are trying to help, not seeking a reward in this life, but in the next. Now, the second aspect of Lent we shall talk about is prayer. The most important form of prayer we should practice during Lent is that of private prayer. Jesus prayed a lot during those 40 days in the desert, but that's not the only time we've recorded of him praying or teaching about prayer. Time and again, we see Jesus withdraw from the crowds of his public ministry only to spend time in prayer and isolation with no one but God alone. He teaches us how to pray many times in the gospel. He even gave us the Our Father, the most popular prayer today. In the verse right after the one we discussed earlier, Jesus shows us how to pray. And when you pray, do not be like the hypocrites, for they love to pray standing in the synagogues and on the street corners to be seen by others. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your room, close the door, and pray to your Father who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. Although we should never neglect prayers in groups, we should remember that even when we do pray with other people, we should never try to show off or act holy. Rather, we should be sincere. He also reminds us that sincere and contrite prayer is always rewarded, so don't give up. Finally, directly after his teachings on almsgiving and prayer, he tells us how to fast, the third aspect of Lent. Fasting was a common custom for the Jews of his time, but that's not the reason Jesus fasted for 40 days in the desert. He did it as an example for us, so we might imitate him. When you fast, do not look somber as the hypocrites do, for they disfigure their faces to show others they are fasting. Truly I tell you, they have received their reward in full. But when you fast, put oil on your head and wash your face, so that it would not be obvious to others that you are fasting, but only to your Father who is unseen. And your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you. Yet again, Jesus reminds us of the importance of secrecy and humility. This time, in terms of fasting. Even if we don't fast during Lent, we should still try to abstain or give up something. And remember, the idea of fasting or abstaining during Lent, or at any time in general, is not so you can tell your friends and family, I gave up this for Lent, or I fasted during Lent. No, actually, we should do the opposite. So this Lent, I strongly encourage you to read Matthew 6 every single day. It's a summary of Lent in the words of our Savior himself. He reminds us to remain humble and to never get carried away in good works just to impress others. And remember, if you try with your whole heart to do these three things during Lent in secrecy and humility, your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you.